My name is Mike, or Sergeant Kohnen, as they call me in the Army. So I want to tell you first why I wrote this story. So when I was in Afghanistan, I got a call from my dad who said that my little brothers were acting up, and they were just entering high school and having issues going to school, doing well in the work, and some other stuff like that. So I just finished probably like one of the hardest missions of my life at that point. Sorry, a little nervous. But so the story that I wrote is about a man named Ouisa, who's 16 years old, who helped me, he helped me understand this lesson in life. So first off, my job in the Army, I'm a combat engineer. What that really means is that I am an explosives expert, and I was trained in robotics, anything from something as small as like a 6x6 inch little remote control device, throw it over a wall, under a tunnel, and the largest thing I ever operated was called a Doking, or an M160, and it's literally like a miniature tank. It's about the size of like a Toyota Camry, and it's pretty cool. So the mission that I'm going to be talking about is where I was using that M160, that Doking, the little Toyota Camry, and I was training a group of special forces guys to use it, more or less in support of them not doing what they were doing. So this little robot that we were teaching them with, pretty easy to control, had its own little screen and flip up, forward, backwards, left and right, but on the front of it, it had what's called like a mine flail. So it's a big rotating tumbler that had probably 50 to 100 chains that had hammers on the end of them. So their job was to pound the earth and hit an IED, and sometimes it would destroy it before it could even go off, or it would then take the blast and divert it from its shield. So the mission that I was going on was to expand territory for the special forces. So their mission was to get the local populace to help them, give them information, tell them what's going on in the area and all that kind of stuff. But they couldn't do that if they couldn't protect them. So they had 5 little checkpoints outside their base, and their job was to push those out every couple of months. So the mission that we actually went on was to push one of these checkpoints just a little bit further. The special forces, so about what their job was versus mine, they drove in T-Rexes. So if anybody, you've seen that little at Sam's Club, you see that Yamaha thing, or at Cabela's or whatever, those 4x4 vehicles, they rode in those with 240 Limas on the back end, which most people know what a 240 Bravo is, military, but the Lima is the special version, short barrel, collapsible stock, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So they had actually 2 of those attached on the back end of a T-Rex, which seems kind of crazy. They also rode around in cut-off T-shirts, jeans, a plate carrier, and a helmet. So if that tells you anything about them. And us, on the other end, were in massive armored vehicles that weighed, the lightest one was about 20 tons, full kit. So you're wearing, sometimes even knee pads, but plates, front, sides, helmets, gear, all that kind of stuff. So our job was to create a security group, clear a path behind them. They were going to head out first in the morning. We were going to head out about an hour behind them. They were going to set up security. We were going to reinforce security. Then they were going to send in, they actually had contractors and stuff that would take this site and figure out where they were going to start building. And they had Afghan units and stuff that were going to actually build this new little checkpoint. So what actually happened that morning was about 45 minutes after they left, I'm sitting there on base, and it seems like all hell broke loose. So I'm actually using the bathroom at this time, and I'm standing in what they had, what's called a desert rose. So it's a PVC pipe that goes about 20, 30 feet into the ground, and that's what you go to the bathroom in. About 10 feet from me is 3rd Infantry Division's mortar team, which we called Money Shot. Wonder why they're called Money Shot, but they start launching off mortars. So I'm using the bathroom, explosions are going off 10 feet from me. I started freaking out. So what was going on was they were encountering much more like enemy activity than they expected. So we got an emergency call that we needed to leave that second. And with that second, they left with about 10,000 rounds, and they were light, like really light. So they loaded us up with like a couple of skids full of ammo, threw that stuff in the truck, and we started hauling out. So my job was to bring a couple extra M160s. So I had one, that Doe King mine flail looking guy in front of me, and we pushed out. So I'm operating this in the front seat of one of these big armored trucks. So we run into our first little obstacle, which was a canal road. And a canal road is not what you expect here in the States. It's literally like a little mud slump that water was traveling in the middle of. So we hit this thing, collapsed it, and it just starts gushing water into what's just dirt. So this dried mud and sand and dust starts turning into just like the nastiest substance possible. That's about as far as we made it. But during this time, so we get stuck at this point. I travel forward trying to go through the canal. It breaks, water starts gushing, we get stuck. We tried to hook up the little tank guy in front of us to pull us. He was not nearly the same kind of weight we were, so he wasn't getting us out. We left with 3 trucks to do this. The truck behind me takes the right side, he gets stuck. Truck behind him takes the left side, he gets stuck. So we're all 3 stuck, and like stuck bad. So at this point, we call up, ask for some support, send the tow truck out, and save our butts, even though we're supposed to be saving somebody else. So I met, while this is all going on, I met a man named Ouisa. So Ouisa is a 16-year-old kid. So I'm out on the ground hauling these big chains back and forth, trying to hook them up between trucks, and I see this, at first I hear this dirt bike coming towards me. I'm like, this is a little funky. I see this Afghan kid riding on it, and he's got an AK-47 strapped to him. So he, not even worried at all. I pick up my rifle, pointed at him, screaming at him, just walks right up, pushes my rifle out of the way, and starts looking and seeing like what we're doing. The local populace and stuff knew him, but I hadn't been working with them. The SF had been doing that the whole time. So he comes up, jokes around, he's like trying to check out and see what we're doing. He didn't speak any English at all, little words and stuff. But so I'm sitting there and I'm digging with a shovel underneath one of the tires, trying to get like this mud out. And at this point, the water's gushed. I'm like up waist high in mud, just trying to shovel as much as I can out, just to get underneath the thing and hook up chains to an axle so that we can pull these things out. Ouisa comes up to me and he's just like, "Stupid American, I'm stronger than you," takes my shovel, and he starts digging for us. So at this point, it was pretty cool. I'm just standing there watching another dude dig me out. So that's, also he had like 3 or 4 other guys with him who just seemed to be kind of like his little henchmen. They were older, but Ouisa, I found out later he's 16 years old. You could tell he was like the leader of their little pack. So that's all I ever saw of him, but I found out a lot more about him the next day. So we finish getting unstuck. We called it a day. We rolled back. They ended up airdropping the ammo to those guys and helping them out later. But the next morning, I get woken up and by this Afghan who lived on like a quarter of the section of the fob we were staying at. And he's like, "Hey, come with us." So a group of maybe like 6 or 7 of us get up and we go over there and we sit down and we start like having breakfast with these guys. And they start introducing us to the guys that are sitting there. One of the guys that we get introduced to, I don't remember his name anymore, but he was the ALP commander. So the ALP is the Afghan local police, and that is, like that would be like your city jurisdiction police department. So he's the commander of them. So we start telling him of this kid who just like walked upon us the day before, and that he's riding a dirt bike, carrying an AK, and he's like, "Oh, that's my son." And so we're like, that's kind of weird, because the ALP in Afghanistan, those kind of positions make a boatload of money, like way more than you would think. There's a lot of corruption and stuff that goes on, but the higher you are up in those positions, your money's exponential because you're taking it from the bottom guys. So I knew his family had money when I found out that that was his dad. So that was kind of the first weird thing. And they start telling us stories about what Darwiza does. And so I start picturing these three guys that are around him, and they tell us that Darwiza's job is to go out and find Taliban groups and to convince these Taliban groups that they want to join him. So him and his buddies want to join the Taliban forces and fight against America, the British that were there, the Danish, all that kind of stuff, and kill them. So he convinces them, they set up a meeting, they have dinner, lunch, whatever with them, and during this meeting, they kill the Taliban. And not just kill them, he then scalps them and brings that back to his dad to prove what he's doing. So again, like Darwiza is 16 years old, he's going out and doing this, fighting not because he has to, like his family's got money, he's in a good position, he's protected. The Special Forces base has been around for like probably 15 years at this point. You ever heard like the stories about Sangin Valley and that massacre? This is all like right inside that area. So he doesn't need to be doing this stuff. There's a reason why he's doing it, and it's for safety and to protect his family and the villages and all that kind of stuff. Let me catch up real quick. So kind of, what did I learn from Darwiza's situation? This is where the title of the story comes. I started writing the story actually right after I spoke to my dad. So when I spoke to my dad on the phone, it was right after I had finished this mission. And I started writing a paper called Life's Not Fair. And I was going to give this to my little brothers. I never did, just because of their age and the story and kind of the stuff that went on with that. And I was pretty mad at the time, and I didn't want to like push my anger onto them. But I learned a lot. I learned that God sent this like boy, Darwiza, to fight and to kill Taliban. He has no identity to these ALP people and his dad's position and all this kind of stuff, and he still fights and does this. He was 16 years old. He wasn't fighting for money. He didn't choose to do this. And so I wrote this paper as Life's Not Fair. Like, if you think that you're on the unfair position of life, you're wrong. Life was unfair for this guy and what he was doing. So that's Darwiza's story. I think about this guy quite a bit, and I wonder where he's at now and hope that he's still alive. But why do I need to tell this story? Again, because life isn't fair. So when you're having trouble every single day trying to figure out what clothes to put on, your next position in life with work, just remember, it could be much, much worse if you don't get that position, if your clothes don't look perfect, that kind of stuff. Think about other people in this world that don't quite have a position that you have. How did this story end? So these Special Forces guys that we worked with, you guys probably want to know the closure of that. So they eventually did end up taking the hill. They did take a little bit of casualties. They had a bomb-handling dog they named Master Sergeant. So if you didn't know, dogs in the military get ranked 2. This guy was pretty high up. He unfortunately lost his life on top of the hill, and his handler took a hip bone of the dog in the jaw. Another rule when you're deployed is if you ever break a bone or need a cast or something, they send you home. That Special Forces guy never went home, even though his jaw was broken from taking a hit from an explosion to his face. That tells you what kind of guy he was. The other reason I needed to tell this story is because from this story, I think I found a little bit more in God. I always believed in God as a kid, but I respected him more for where he put me in my life. He kept me from doing that job every single day, but Darwiza's got to do that every single day. And also, I tell this story because it makes me love my family a little bit more. Yeah, that's my story. I do want to thank a couple of people, especially the people who have spoke before me. I know I'm not quite your age group. You guys have done some pretty awesome things in life, and I hope that when I'm your age, people look at me like they look at you guys. Thank you, guys.